Good afternoon. So, Arenanet has given us a new roadmap for Guild Wars 2. Not new, right? It's an update to stuff that we already knew. But they're making that effort to keep us informed. And so I wanted to kind of take a step back and take a look at what they said. Take a look at what they said because, like any company who's in the business of making money, they see things from a business perspective, and they say things that are designed to generate income. Now, I'm not saying that these are like nefarious folks over at Arenanet, but they're in the business of doing business, right? Like everybody. And so when they lay out these roadmaps, they lay them out in a fashion to where they want to get players excited. Can't blame them for that. That's good business. That's fine. And after these things, just like when they announced the mini expansions, players got really excited, and the devil was in the details, and the truth was that the players probably shouldn't have been nearly as excited as they were. And a lot of people were saying a lot of really stupid things, because people have a tendency to say stupid things. And so the same thing's going to happen here with this one. And people are going to say things that they're extrapolating, or it's not even extrapolating because there's no reason to believe it based on what Arenanet has said. But they're going to insert their wishful thinking into their opinions. And so let's look at what Arenanet actually said. Okay, so we'll get started here. Hello, Commanders. Welcome to the latest installment of Arenanet Studio Update, your go-to resource. It is now, the studio is now the go-to resource for information about the studio. That's fine. At best, that is true. At worst, that's like saying the Kremlin is a go-to resource for what's going on in Russia. It just depends on whether or not they want to tell the truth. It doesn't matter. We'll go past that. All right, content model Q&A. In our February studio update, we outlined some changes. Yes. I've been lost in Tangled Depths for the last 2 months with no cell phone service, and I missed the news. That's a little bit funny, right? Because we all know, and apparently Arenanet knows, that so many people get so salty about Tangled Depths. I love Tangled Depths, but people get salty about it. That's fine. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about, right? So then they provide like a breakdown on all the mini expansion stuff that they already talked about, so I'm not going to reiterate that because they reiterate. Why would I reiterate their reiteration? All right. So then we get into some stuff that we actually care about. The next question. Do smaller expansions mean that there are fewer developers working on Guild Wars 2? And then Arenanet provides a response to their own question. Nope, quite the contrary. In fact, thanks to the growth that Guild Wars 2 saw in 2022, we're increasing the size of the Guild Wars 2 development team, largely in content and systems design. We've already hired a bunch of new folks since January, and we'll be opening additional roles throughout the year. Okay, that's a good answer. Objectively, that is a pretty solid answer, and I think for the most part, it should be perceived as good news by everybody who likes Guild Wars 2. The only thing I would caution is when they add more people to Arenanet, yes, it means more people to work on Guild Wars 2, but what it really means is more people to work on the Guild Wars IP. So the fact that they are adding people does not mean that we have 4 expansions, 5 expansions, 6 expansions, whatever, ahead of us in Guild Wars 2. It might mean that we only have 1 expansion before it goes into maintenance mode. These are personnel dedicated to Arenanet and to the, assuming that Arenanet's making their money off the Guild Wars 2 IP, which I think is a reasonable assumption. These are people dedicated to Guild Wars as a, to the world of Tyrion. And that presumably means Guild Wars 2. They say increasing the size of the Guild Wars 2 development team, but I take it with a grain of salt, right? Good news, but don't lose your mind somewhere. Next question. How does the shift result in more support for the core game? The response. Let's start by defining the core game. Okay, I'm not going to read their whole response on this because kind of what their response is it means good things. That's great. They want to define core game as like everything that's in the game, essentially. So what does it mean for everything? And the response is good things. And so it's kind of a lot of talking without without a lot said, honestly, in my opinion. Then they go on to blow their horn and they say, hey, look at all the things. In a little over a year, these teams delivered a significant list of changes. all while Expansion 4 has been in development. Then they go on to talk about that stuff. The return of Living World Season 1, Steam launch, updated visuals and mechanics from multiple world bosses, emboldened mode for raids, so on and so forth. Some of this stuff is really good stuff. Things that have meant a lot. Some of it I don't know was as substantial. I don't know that some of these things deserved their own bullets. A Blackline statuette overhaul to make collecting and exchanging them more rewarding. So a company whose entire business model relies on them generating income from whales, because a vast majority, and in fact their most skilled players don't spend a lot of money on the game, presumably because they actually exchange gold for gems. So they're really Arenanet, as much as anyone, is reliant on whales. So to give a whole bullet to like, hey, we did something to make life better for whales, I don't know, man. But some of this stuff is super good, right? The Mega Server map queue, I think, is a great thing. Bank access from the Mystic Forge, that's like a sneaky good quality of life change that they made, right? So some of this stuff is good. That's fine. They go on to say, and allied player visual effect filtering. Spoiler. Yes, so we will get into that soon, and that is fantastic. That's great. That's good on them. Despite that progress, there's still much left to do. We take a lot of pride in our work and making our players happy, and there is a nearly infinite list of things we'd like to do. That's good, because there's a nearly infinite list of things that I think you should do. However, both time and development resources are finite, and that is fair. I mean, that's an excellent observation. All the more reason that I would like for them to take care of their game. And some of this stuff is going to address that concern. Recently I've said in several videos that Arenanet's not taking care of their game. Some of the stuff actually addresses that, and you might come to conclude they do, in fact, to some degree, take care of their game. I still don't think they do a very good job, but they do some things. Some things are mentioned here that I think are good. We'll get into that. For now, we're addressing systems that will positively impact as many players as possible. As time goes on, we hope to dig into more niche areas of the game. I hope those niche areas include like addressing cheating and addressing AFK farming and taking care of the community, and not just cleaning up the Blackline trading post. I genuinely hope. All right, the next question. February studio update said that future expansions would include combat features and didn't mention elite specializations at all. What does that mean? So I'm glad. Now, these questions, I assume, are like the studio kind of proffering these questions based on what people are saying in Reddit or in the forums, or that they're trying to ask Guild Arenanet directly or something like that. Presumably these questions come from somewhere. This one is actually like a meaningful question that I can actually see a player asking the studio if they were to directly address the studio. So let's see what their response is, because it's something that I noticed immediately when they announced the quote-unquote mini expansion thing. In the current design and implementation of elite specializations, we feel that with every new expansion, there's been increasingly limited design space left to add new and differentiated roles for each profession. I agree. I think that was true. That was always going to be true of elite specs. It was true going all the way back to Heart of Thorns, when Dragon Hunter was Ranger Guardian. So it's always been true. Now I would completely argue with it. We're not looking for new and differentiated roles for each profession, because we understand that there are only how many different types of damage you can do. You can do power damage, you can do damage over time. Those are the two types. You can do AoE, or you can do point damage. Those are the only two. So you can do point power. You can't really even do point damage over time. You do AoE damage over time, I guess. You know what I mean? The formula only has so many variables. So, and then you got other parts of the formula that aren't going to change either, right? They're static. There are 9 professions. There are always going to be 9 professions. We know they're not going to add another profession. If you're thinking, and if you're reading this and saying to yourself, "Oh, more professions are coming," then you're really stupid. And I'm not going to sugarcoat that. You're dumb. So there was always going to be limited design space. We're not asking for a new way to play that's never been done before in Guild Wars 2. Any intelligent player understands we're past that point. At this point, it's flavor. Give my Necro main hand sword. I really want my Necro to have main hand sword. We'll revisit that in a few minutes. In other words, most of the playstyles that we'd like to see supported, this is them again, supported for each profession already exist or should exist within their existing elite specialization options. I have like all kinds of issues with this statement. Let's read it again. In other words, most of the playstyles that we'd like to see supported for each profession already exist or should exist within their existing elite specialization options. If you envision the only meaningful role in Guild Wars 2 as DPS, with a handful of support roles, then they're absolutely correct. Then they've nailed it. Because what they've done is over time they've taken a lot of different elite specs that did things other than DPS or Boombot or healer. Those are the three things. That is the Trinity in Guild Wars 2. If someone said, "Hey, there is no Trinity in Guild Wars 2," that is true for the open world. It is true for like your personal story. I don't even know if it's true in World vs. World, but it isn't true in Tier 4 fractals and strikes and raids. It's not. If it was, then people wouldn't need websites to tell them how to build to meet those roles, right? And yet almost all the roles ultimately get changed to the elite specs over time, all get changed to DPS. Spellbreaker wasn't introduced to us as a DPS. Scrapper was not introduced to us as a DPS. What if they become over time? DPS. Because players like the flavor of that elite spec. They say, "Oh my gosh, I want this dagger warrior. Oh my gosh, I want my NG wielding a hammer. I want to go for this look. I want to do this thing. I like the flavor of it. Oh, but now I'm not competitive on DPS with the other people in my squad." And so Arenanet has let me down. That's what players say, unfortunately. And then Arenanet caves in. So, and I specifically mentioned those two because those two had something in common. They were both on their introduction kind of built around counterplay, and now that's gone from both of them. Spellbreaker still has it to a degree in World vs. World because counterplay was hard baked into its skills. But what is the number one Spellbreaker build right now? It's a DPS build, right? So I really take issue with Arenanet and the way they package that there, because I think it's like remarkably short-sighted and kind of in denial of what's actually going on in their game. But it is an interesting question. So what's going to go on with elite specs? We know we're not going to get elite specs in the foreseeable future, and I strongly suspect maybe they'll throw out one more batch of elite specs right before going into maintenance mode. But I kind of suspect maybe we'll never see any more elite specs. So what are we going to get? With our next expansion, our goal is to further augment the combat options for each profession. Okay, so that's each profession, not each elite spec. By adding new tools to their arsenal, and by lifting constraints that will unlock an unprecedented number of playstyle customization options, while keeping the feel of Guild Wars 2 combat true to its origins. Theory crafters are going to be very busy. Everything that's in that paragraph bothers me a lot. And I'd like to say, I wish I could sit here and say, like, I'm really happy about this. Because, because we're not getting elite specs, so give us something else instead. And here they're saying they're going to give us something else instead. If you played the first Guild Wars, you could slot all kinds of different skills wherever you wanted them, and you could go out and obtain just an incredible number of skills. And you could run two professions simultaneously, so you could be like a necro warrior or an assassin ritualist or whatever it is. Like warrior monk was a thing for a long time, right? I don't know if it still is or not. I have no idea what's meta in that game anymore. I log into it like once a year. I did log into it just recently though. Too many options meant that the limited number of people who were looking at balance on the staff could never keep up with the community. And there was always going to be something broken. And the only way to prevent something from being broken was to take a lot of these skills and a lot of the different things and really make them look a lot the same and kind of break things down to the common denominator, which removed some of that variety, but at least allowed them to balance the game. That's what I'm hearing here, and I'll tell you why. So they say several things. Add new tools to their arsenal. Okay, so in other words, each profession adding new tools to their arsenal. Right, so warrior, not spellbreaker, warrior is going to get new tools. Why do they specify profession versus spec? Presumably it's going to be applicable across the specs. new tools, something we cannot currently access, by lifting constraints that will unlock an unprecedented number of playstyle customization options. I'm really concerned because and then to go on to say theory crafters are going to be very busy. Yeah, your balance team is going to be very busy. Your balance team is going to be so busy. Already a game where people say balance isn't very good, and I don't care because I occasionally jump into world versus world. I don't do structured PvP at all. I have no dog in this fight. If they allow me to run Reaper and Scourge and Harbinger all simultaneously, if those are my three trait tracks on Necro, I'm fine with it because it doesn't change my gameplay. I play almost exclusively solo. Dungeons, low-level fractals, open world, goofing off. So it doesn't impact me. But when I look at the health of the game as a whole, if they do something silly like that, it's gonna be really, really problematic in the long run. It's exceptionally short-sighted if they're looking at something like allowing you to run more than one elite spec simultaneously, or I could live with utilization of weapons from other elite specs. So in other words, I'm a Scourge, but I'm wielding Greatsword. I can live with that. But even then, their balance team is going to be drowning. So while I like the idea that they want to address the fact they're not doing elite specs and they want to provide something else, I really don't like what's in that paragraph because I think it's too much. You know what I would like? One new weapon for each profession. Available core. No elite spec build around. And so I told you I was going to come back to main hand sword Necro. Just give Necro main hand sword that is 3 new skills. 1, 2, and 3 on sword that Necro would obtain. Make it a power weapon or make it a conde. I don't care. Make it whatever you want. Now you only have to balance that for 3 new skills for Necro. But it's a whole new flavor. Necros couldn't do that before. That would address everything that they want to achieve. If that is the route they go, I'll be very happy with them. I'll think that's a great move. But if they're going to do something ridiculous, and by the way, if they're going to do something wonky, like just allowing you to run more than one, like a secondary class or secondary profession, or multiple elite specs, or just something silly like that stuff, then at least do me a favor. If we're going to go down that road, go down another road for me and allow me to use my transmutation charges to put light armor on my warrior, heavy armor on my Necro, medium armor on my NG, who should already have medium armor. But you get the point that I'm saying. If we're going to start, to quote them, lifting constraints, how about lifting a huge constraint for Fashion Wars and allow me to put that ridiculous, super scant light armor on my warrior? That would make me far happier than anything you can do with elite specs. I'm not expecting it. They've made excuses on it before. But that would be a bigger quality of life improvement than giving me 2 elite specs at the same time. Next question. How does the What Lies Beneath quarterly release differ from future expansions quarterly releases? I'm not even going to read the response, and I'll tell you why. Every intelligent player should have looked at Guyala Delve and said, this is not intended to be what the expansion light or whatever, mini expansion, whatever you want to call it, is going to look like. And when I did a review of Guyala Delve, I even said that. We should understand this is not intended to be the way content's going to look when they start rolling out the mini expansions. And basically, that whole question is there for them to explain that. It should have been explained before they release Guyala Delve. That way they don't have to explain it here, but that's what it is. Okay, spring summer roadmap updates. Here's more detailed look at what's to come over the next 2 months. This is where things actually do get pretty good. So if I'm bashing the studio thus far, it's because I'm bashing the studio because they say stupid things and do stupid things. But some of this stuff is good. All right, May 2nd, which is already passed. That was yesterday. So profession balance update. I have no feedback on that. I haven't played anything other than Reaper enough in the last 14 hours to really have any input. Again, I'm not raiding with Snowcrows, so I am not the person to go ask T-Pop. Next thing, May 23rd, new End of Dragons content. What lies within? So I'm not going to read any of this either because basically it just goes on to say hey, guess what? Well, actually, I'm going to read some of it because there is some good stuff there. But basically, they're like, hey, there's more to the Guyala Delves map. Well, everybody knew that. Everybody looked at the map and immediately knew that it was going to be rolled out like Silverway style or Dry Top style, or Drizzlewood Coast. Or actually, Drizzlewood Coast would be a great parallel, which already was basically Drizzlewood Coast to me, just not as well done. And that's exactly what it's like. So now they're going to roll out that second half, and basically there's going to be a second half of the meta. So, like, it's exactly Drizzlewood Coast, which is what I said in my review of Guyala Delve. But one of the interesting things they mentioned, once the danger has been cleared out of Guyala Delve, the map will enter a more peaceful state fit for exploring, which kind of doesn't do that well right now. Several new adventures will become available, including our first cooperative adventure featuring the Siege Turtle. Am I ever going to do that? Probably not, because I don't have friends, so I don't play cooperatively very much. Unless someone like pops up on the LFG like, hey, do this adventure with, I don't know, maybe. But here's why I think it's a good thing, even if I never do it. Because the Siege Turtle is like a useless mount. The only functionality the Siege Turtle has is to overcome obstacles that they put in the maps specifically to give the Siege Turtle value in the first place. So they created a lock to justify the key. That's what Siege Turtle is. And that's stupid. The skins are nice, I guess. It's a fun thing, and it goes back to the first Guild Wars. All those things are great. I like it. Like, that's fine. You want to stomp around your Siege Drill? That's great. But gameplay-wise, it really doesn't have a lot of value. Really doesn't. So at least they're trying to give you more opportunities. They're still creating a lock to justify the key, but at least they're creating more locks so you can have fun unlocking more locks with this key that doesn't really have a purpose, being the Siege Turtle. So that is a good thing. That is a good move by the studio. If it sounds like I'm trashing them, it's because I'm trashing them for like a mount that really has no purpose. I was about to say, like, if they really wanted to make it meaningful, they could have put like 5 people on the Siege Turtle, and then you can put your whole party on the Siege Turtle. But that's what the skiff is. The skiff is a mount. The skiff is a 5-person mount. That's what it actually is. It's a 5-person skimmer. So they did that too, and in fact they mentioned that. As far as the previous mounts go. Earlier End of War Dragons maps will share in the updates with new Siege Turtle, Jade Bot, and Skiff adventures. So there you go. Your 5-person mount will get adventures too. Again, good things, probably not things. You'll also start running into Oni in the Guild Wars 2 End of Dragons maps, stalking the shadows from. So remember when you would do bounties in Season 4, and then the bounties would turn out to be ambushes? Remember how much the community loved that? How many people got on Reddit and the forums and said, I really love this bounty system because I love going to do, or not bounty, but ambush, because I love going to do bounty and then I get ambushed, and that feels really, really good. Remember that response from the community? Obviously, I'm being sarcastic. I have a sneaking suspicion that's how this Oni thing is going to go too. Like, I think the studio's like really excited about this. Like, oh, you're going to be moving through Echovault Forest, and all of a sudden, like, these elite Oni are going to come out of nowhere and wreck you, and you're going to really enjoy it. People aren't going to really enjoy it. And wait and see how that plays out. Stalking from the shadows to strike unsuspecting adventurers. I'm looking forward to the response to that in the forums and the subreddit. All right. And then they go on to talk about new rewards, weapon skins, and armor skins and stuff like that. And that's good. They're never going to go wrong with releasing new skins. That's always, like, at this point, that's like Guild Wars 2's strength. Like, that's where they should be making their money. This next release will be the end of Guild Wars 2 End of Dragons. So after that, we will start seeing the mini expansions. Although they are unclear at this point in time when. If I had to venture a guess, I would say like November, December. Because you're making money off Christmas and so forth. Maybe I'm wrong. Sounds like it's already almost ready to ship, but they're definitely not going to ship it prior to August, September. There's no way. And I would think like November, December is more likely. All right, June 6th, Dragon Bash, and then Allied Player Visual Effect Filtering. So yeah, Dragon Bash is a thing. Great. More interesting, Hide Ally Visual Effects will become a thing on June 6th. So now, like all that crazy nonsense that happens when you're in a big group battle and you're just like seeing all that visual noise, you start to filter some of that out. I still wish that you could specifically turn off infusions, but this is at least a step in the right direction. And again, the drop down is going to give you several options: only show squad, only show party, or hide all, or hide none. I will probably run like only show party because I'm almost never partied or in a squad or anything. But like for dungeons and fractals, that will still give me the option to at least have that party stuff there, specifically in that instance content. Where with 5-man instance content, it isn't usually overwhelming, right? So that's where I want to be on that.
Don't fix me. I'm not broken.
And then they talk world versus world, and we're actually going to get some other world versus world stuff later. As part of our focus on core game modes, we'll be releasing another round of world versus world improvements, including the addition of a new infusion and weapon set, and new ways to spend your unused skirmish claim tickets and emblems of the Avenger. An account-bound version of the infusion can be purchased after completing an achievement in world versus world. Keep Lords will also have the chance to drop a tradable version of the infusion when defeated. Alright, so every time Arenanet wants to make an improvement to world versus world and they don't know how, they just throw like items at it. Like, hey, we're have more things because we don't know what to do with this game mode. Invariably, that's what they. So if you're super excited about like the world versus world infusion, and maybe to look super cool, then that'd be great. Like, I'm all about it. But I just caution you that them adding loot to world versus world is almost always an indicator that they don't know what else to do with it. We are going to circle back to world versus world later. June 27th, Cantha themed Fractal Dungeon and Profession Balance update. Okay, so new Fractal's coming, and that's good because a new Fractal did not come with End of Dragons, right? So, and I mentioned that in my review, Guile of Delve. So they still owe us a new Fractal for End of Dragons, and so it's coming. It is Cantha themed. I'm not actually that excited about that, but that's a personal taste thing. It would be appropriate for it to be Cantha themed. They go on to discuss that after Sunqua Peak, people people expressed that they wanted their fractals to be more action oriented and less cinematic. My words, not theirs. I do like that they acknowledge that they still want to keep the fractals story-based and lore-based. I think that's really good. I think that's what fractals should be. But Sunqua Peak does feel like a drag sometimes. I'm not good at that fractal. I've only done it maybe 5 or 6 times. I kind of avoid it because I suck at it and I don't enjoy it. But I also don't enjoy it because it really feels like it drags. It really feels like it takes a long time. Even on T1, it's like, man, this is like an odd fractal compared to like, I don't know, something that goes fast. So I'm glad they're kind of acknowledging that. Like, that's where fractal should be, right? Because this is content you're going to do over and over and over again, and they mention that. There's even, especially when you're replaying the instance often. So I like that they acknowledge that, and hopefully they do a good job. There will be a challenge mode for that fractal, but it'll be introduced later after the fractal's introduced to give them time to tune things and work out bugs. And I think that's a good play on their part too. They have kind of nailed down their introduction of fractals, which they should have it nailed down because they only do it like once every 3 years. So they really should like have a pretty solid, unless the oral history of how to roll out a fractal gets lost during staff turnover. But they do seem to have the system down pretty well, where they introduce it, work out the bugs, and then roll out the challenge. And then they go on to talk about the balance update. I'm not really going to address that because I don't want to address it. They're never going to make people happy with those, so they need to they're not going to make me happy because everything's ultimately going to end up as DPS for the most part. Like even specs that aren't designed to be DPS, like there are. Healing specs now do more damage than at launch than any of the DPS specs did. So, whatever, man. All right, long-range development initiatives. Hearing about what's coming through the end of June is cool and all, but what else is there, you ask? Here's a high-level look at some of our active initiatives on the Guild Wars 2 team. Core game updates. After the Allied Visual Effects filtering feature releases on June 6th, the team primarily responsible for core game updates will be turning their attention toward completing their most ambitious project yet, a rework of an existing core game reward system. Intriguing, right? This feature is still many months away. They say intriguing, right? I don't know that I'm terribly intrigued, but this feature is still many months away from shipping, and we're not ready to talk about it quite yet. But we wanted to let you know that they'll be heads down on this one for a while. Just want to make sure you don't assume that they've been kidnapped by Squid or something. In the meantime, we'll be keeping an eye. Okay. There's one there. You know, I'm sure you're a smart person. You know what an article is. There's an article in there that is important. Completing their most ambitious project yet, a rework of an existing core reward game or reward system. Game reward system. Blah blah blah. I'm stumbling over my words. So it's not the core reward system. It's a very specific system within, like, core game, how rewards are distributed. I don't know what that is. I'm assuming it has nothing to do with dungeons. One, because that's kind of dead content, even though it's I'm probably going to use dungeon footage for this video to as a backdrop for the audio. But just recently they consolidated dungeon tokens, right? So I don't think they plan to do. I think that is sufficient for dungeon rewards. I don't think they're going to do anything else. I don't think they're going to do anything with fractal rewards. It might be map rewards. Map rewards did not launch with the core game, but it's been around for a long time now, and maybe deserves a look. If they introduce reward tracks for open world maps, don't be shocked. I don't know that I'm in favor of the idea, but don't be shocked. That's what they do. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. That's the extent of my speculation. I have no idea what it means. Infrastructure improvements. I'm not going to belabor that because I'm not super smart on that stuff. Thus far, I feel like the trading post is working worse, not better. But over the last few days, the game has not been working well anyway. I don't know if it's something they did or if they're experiencing like a whole bunch of DDoS or something like that. I have no idea. The DirectX 11 thing, I haven't seen a noticeable change, but that is purely anecdotal. They know what's going on behind the game in terms of, packets and data flow and whatever programmer things that I don't understand. I'm going to trust them on this. It hasn't gotten worse. Well, Trade Post says. General gameplay hasn't gotten worse, so I'm going to trust that they know what they're doing. Alright, World vs. World. Told you we'd circle back around. The team has continued to mercilessly hammer code into compliance in preparation for the next phase of world restructuring, the introduction of alliances. That work breaks down into three main categories: wrapping up the server plumbing that's needed to support alliances, client data management to be specific, implementing the first pass of the alliance management interface, and fixing bugs related to matchmaking team assignments, world vs. world queues. We're targeting early to mid-summer to run the first world restructuring beta with alliances. Functionality will be straightforward, but it should give guilds and alliances everything they need to manage their communities. Creating alliances, inviting guilds, kicking guilds, and leaving. All players that have selected a battle guild in an alliance will be placed on a team together after the world restructuring event. Prior to that, we plan to run one more world restructuring test without alliances so we can test recent fixes in matchmaking team assignments queues and some back-end work we've done to support the alliance feature. This will be our first multi-week world restructuring beta test. That's actually interesting. Meaning that we'll also be able to verify that teams are properly moving into different matchups and tiers using the one-up, one-down system. We'll follow up with a date for this test once it's been confirmed. Okay, so I actually secretly suspected that they were, once again going to tap out on trying to move forward in World vs. World and overhaul it. So I'm pleasantly surprised that they are moving forward. And they go to lengths to explain why this is taking time. Alright, man. Reasons and excuses are two different things. Is this a reason or an excuse? I genuinely believe that, the entire MMORPG is going to be developed in the amount of time that it takes them to overhaul World vs. World. I don't know how I feel about that. We'll see. I will step back a little bit from comments I made recently about them doing nothing with it. Apparently they are doing something, but I suspect that we're still a long, long ways away, a minimum of 8 months, before we see this stuff go live. And that's going to put the total time for work on this, like, probably over 3 years. That's kind of questionable. And more questionable if it ends up not really working. I mean, they better get it right, which is probably why they're putting so much time into it, right? They better get it right, or it's going to look stupid. Expansion 4, you already know all there is to know about the next expansion at this point. That is an incredibly stupid thing to say. We don't know anything about the next expansion at this point. So to say we already know all there is to know is like, let's say they misspoke. All we know, we already know all that they are comfortable releasing about the next expansion at this point. And fast forward. No, not fast forward. Earlier. I didn't read it. I think it's way earlier. I think it's very early, actually, in their whole thing. I want to see if I can find it.
They'll have to hit much harder.
Because earlier in this thing somewhere, they actually specifically say that they're already. Here we go. Yeah, I skipped this because it looked to me like they were just making excuses. But now it's relevant. Expansion 4. Going back to how does What Lies Beneath quarterly release different from future expansions? I'm taking a quote out of the middle of that paragraph. There was no new Guild Wars 2 End of Dragons content then. No, that's not it.
Finished with you. I am not your dear heart.
We shall see, dear heart.
Oh yeah, here it is. Comparatively, the 4th expansion hasn't even been officially revealed yet, and we're already making headway on its quarterly release content.
What an experience.
So they're working on what is no longer Living World, but the whatever it is that comes after the mini expansion, the rest of the expansion, I guess. They're already working on that for the 4th expansion. So there's more. There better be more to know about the expansion than what we know about it. It's one of their top priorities right now. Each day the team is working hard at bringing a new part of Tyria to life. That's good. I don't want the new expansion to take place in Cantha. Nothing against Cantha. Like, they did a good job. Cantha's beautiful. I don't want to be there anymore. Just like I don't want to go back to the desert. I don't want to go to Maguma, the heart of Maguma. If it's an expansion, give me something new. Like, don't take me to Lion's Arch. Complete with a whole lineup of fearsome baddies for the commander to beat up on now that the Elder Dragons are no longer viable punching bags. Alright, so this is, and then they show us some creatures. I'll throw that image into the video real quick. So then that's kind of the last thing I'm going to speculate on or comment on because it's the end of their thing, and I've been talking way too much. They need to give us something entirely new. If these are, because I heard someone else in another video, I don't remember who it was, refer to them as void creatures. They better not be. Better have nothing to do with Shiro. It better have nothing to do with what was it, like the purist thing, like Reiko or whatever it is. Better have ideally it has nothing to do with Cantha. It better not have anything to do with any of the dragons. It better not have anything to do with the human gods. Give us something entirely new. I liked the dragon thing while the dragon thing was going on. That's fine. It's what Guild Wars 2 is built on. It's over. Give us something else. Stop relying on the first game. Stop relying on something you did 4 or 5 years ago in this game. Tell a new story. Come up with a new idea. You don't have to think about elite specs anymore, so you can think about something else. You want design space? There's your design space. You have a massive amount of map you can still play with. You have existing lore that wasn't used in Guild Wars 1 and hasn't been used in Guild Wars 2 that you can still tap into. You have entirely new ideas. Somewhere in your office, you must have entirely new ideas that you can play with. It better not be something we've already heard about. It better not be. And for crying out loud, when you give us something new, please get rid of Rox and Marjorie and Bram and Casimir and even Canuck and Ritlock. Timey, for Christ's sake. Get rid of them. Let them go on with their lives. Let Casimir and Marjorie get married. Let Canuck gamble and drink. Let Ritlock go somewhere and brood. Let Logan shack up with Jenna. And give us something new. That would be more than anything what I would ask for out of a new expansion. Like you're not gonna give us Elite Spec. Hey, that's cool, man. Let me actually change my armor appearance, like regardless of class, and give me some genuinely new story, where you're not using old stuff as a crutch, and I will be immensely pleased. I'll even look the other way if you if you fail on the world versus world thing. If you can actually create something new. So we'll see. Anyway, so those are kind of my thoughts and what I think people should actually be expecting out of some of this stuff. I will say I'm pleasantly surprised in the sense that they are making some forward progress on things, and I think that the allied effects thing is good. Some of the stuff they've recently done, like mega server map keys, are good. I'm interested to see if this is going to be like an open world reward track thing when they're talking about the overhaul of rewards. So interesting things happening. I just hope that they are thoughtful about what they do. Because if I'm running around on a Reaper/Scourge, that, I'm not going to be keen on that. We'll see. All right, well, thank you for taking an incredible 41 minutes to listen to my thoughts, and I hope you have a good one.